Brilliant. Well, look, welcome back to this next stage. We're now going to have our keynote speech from your president, Superintendent Nick Smart, a man who doesn't really need any introduction. You know, he's been in this role for just over a year. And he thinks that police should do better, not more. Nick, over to you.
Good afternoon, Minister, colleagues and guests. It's my great honour to welcome you to our 2025 conference. Whether you're here in person or joining us remotely, I want to thank you for taking the time to come together as leaders and practitioners and partners in policing. The work you do, day in, day out, really matters. It shapes safety, the cohesion and the confidence of our communities, and I'm proud to stand here representing a dedicated and professional cohort. My input today is about the policing reality. It's about the lived experience of the workforce, about the conditions under which our people operate, and the pressures we face both as a service and as individuals. I want to speak openly and frankly about three interconnected challenges. These are police funding, police demand, and most importantly, workforce well-being. These are not new issues, but they are becoming more urgent with every passing year. We are passionate about fighting for the rights of police officers, for the future of our service, and ultimately, the safety of our communities. We, as an association, have a voice, and I am committed to using this privileged position to speak out. And speak out we must, especially when we have had limiting engagement with those with the power to change so much of what I want to speak about today. Frustratingly, it's now 5 years since a Home Secretary joined us for our workforce conference. However, I am extremely pleased that the new Policing Minister has chosen to join us so soon in her tenure, and hope this is the start of a positive working relationship with the new team in the Home Office. So let's look at some of the challenges facing us, but let's also look at some solutions we know can make a difference. We want to influence positive change, or we want to serve as a catalyst to make this happen. I also want you to hear from my colleagues, supers out there, delivering critical services every day on the personal impact of policing. So let's start with funding. The fiscal situation that underpins so much of our challenge. The national picture remains bleak across every public service. We know this. Police funding has suffered massively from chronic underinvestment for the best part of 2 decades. Make no mistake, at present, we are still operating in austerity. So policing continues to sit at the bottom of the pile when it comes to government funding, despite ongoing pressure to deliver widespread reform with fewer and fewer resources. Following the comprehensive spending review, the NPCC referred to a decade of underinvestment which has left police forces selling buildings, borrowing money and raising local taxes to maintain what we already have, with forces facing a projected shortfall of 1.2 billion over the next 2 years, which is now expected to rise. It is the first duty of any government to keep its citizens safe. Yet we see little evidence of a commitment doing this in terms of funding of officers and resources. Instead, ensuring public safety will be even more challenging as the population grows and demand on police rises whilst funding does not keep pace. We are a minimum of 12,000 officers short based on per capita levels when compared to 2010. This is not the service crying wolf. This is the real financial position of the police service. The Police Uplift programme replaced the numbers of officers lost in austerity. What we need now is to build upon this significant investment in direct response to rising demand, increased complexity of crime and heightened public expectations. Many of the government's elected pledges centred around a commitment to safer streets, promising the public that it would meet ambitious targets. Yet the lack of any meaningful investment we face means that the service will continue to struggle and deliver the basics, maintaining officer numbers, delivering the neighbourhood policing guarantee, covering inflationary costs, updated IT and estate infrastructure and continue to function as we are, let alone move forward on new public safety and transformative initiatives. HMIC FRS highlighted only this last week, saying government ambitions must be sufficiently funded. They said forces are struggling both to address the wide-ranging threats to public safety and to meet basic public expectations. These reforms are urgently needed. They must be sufficiently funded. It is positive that the recent pay award included a commitment to central funding covering this uplift, and something that is critical and what we called for, but it's not enough on its own to fund a police service and all we want and need. It is vital that long-term, sustainable funding is injected into policing to enable us to move forward and deliver on the pledges made, to deliver the basics of policing well and keeping the public safe. Why does this matter so much? Because demand continues to rise in both the physical and technical world. It continues to change and critically continues to consist of incidents that should in reality be dealt with by other bodies. We continue to repeat the same systematic errors that are leaving us stretched beyond belief and unable to meet true police demand and are wearing our people down at all ranks. How does this feel in reality? How busy are our members and how do they view this problem? We spoke to a number of superintendents about the issues I'm talking about today, so you can hear their voices, not just mine, on the reality of policing today.
I tend to work between 55 and 60 hours a week normally.
The 50 to 60 hour mark. Sometimes it can be well in excess of that.
Never less than 50 to 60.
But then I work a lot in the evenings when the kids are sort of settled.
I'm on call typically about 3 months a year.
We know that out of 100% of victims, on average 40% of those victims, those crimes are not going to be investigated in the way that that victim maybe expects.
We always talk about policing being that sort of last resort, and ultimately I think we always step in where other people aren't able to or don't have the ability to anymore.
Yeah, I think demand now is at the highest ever level. I've been a police officer now for 27 years, and I look back at perhaps what a superintendent did when I was a sergeant, and it seems like a completely different role.
These are the voices that matter, the people out there doing the work communities depend on, living the reality of what is spoken about in Parliament and in the media. We had a challenge about picking up the pieces of the work of others. This is a crisis that has been allowed to go on for far too long. The former Home Secretary acknowledged that the system is broken and that the police pick up too much demand from others. It's time for government to clearly define what the police mission is. We as a service have repeatedly said this. It's time for the decision makers to engage and listen and to set out clear priorities of what can be realistically delivered. We need national conversations, not about blame, but about responsibility, and about rebuilding a system of public services that work together, sharing performance metrics, outputs and outcomes. We need a reformed criminal justice system that works in unity rather than isolation. There are some solutions. Community safety partnerships need to be accountable for service provision and outcomes. There needs to be national consistency so all citizens can expect the same services. There needs to be national governance to ensure this. This will require political determination and intervention, but it is the right thing to do for the public and the police. Let's develop conversations around preventative plans and powers for other agencies that will better respond to individuals in mental health crisis. This will reduce incidents where police attendance is required and will ultimately result in far more positive outcomes for those concerned, led by those who are trained in these complex issues. Police officers are not medical professionals. They are not social workers. And those in crisis deserve better than simply being placed with the last resort emergency service that will turn up. Police receive around 330,000 reports of missing people each year. Many are young and vulnerable people who have gone missing from places of safety, and many of these are reported as missing regularly. Let's again focus on bespoke plans for intervention for these vulnerable people, developed by clinical experts to prevent them going missing in the first place and keep them safe. Again, this is the right thing to do for all concerned. It's incredibly encouraging to hear of the government's commitment to reforms. We also want reform. This is a tipping point for the service and the chance to make real and tangible change. But where is the white paper that was mentioned 12 months ago here and due to be published in the spring? And more importantly, what will it contain? We've had countless studies and research findings showing us the ways in which our service can be more efficient and more effective, something we also want. So where's the political drive and the plan, and more importantly, the money to make this happen? The white paper should be a blueprint for change based on evidence and engagement with the workforce. We have the evidence. We have the workforce experts, such as our members, ready to inform at every step. So let's commit to change and being better. Within this, we can no longer avoid the critical need to again define the police mission and priorities. Last year, I called for a commitment to do just this, defining what police are here to do and what the public want us to do. Until this happens, we will continue to serve as society's sticking plaster. We will continue to be seen as failing at the basics because we don't have the people or the training to take on other agencies' work as well as our own. This is an unacceptable situation for the public, disappointing for those who measure us and hold us accountable, and unacceptable for the very workforce involved. This situation sets the service up to continually fail. Add in the mix the rising and changing political tensions we continue to see, and policing once again is being given the possible task of balancing rights and speech. We are not a political service, nor should we ever be. We police without fear or favour. Yet those that dictate our actions, who write the law and ask us to enforce it, are rooted in politics. We have once again entered a period of divided Britain, during which we are seeing communities at social conflict over issues linked to equality, diversity, immigration and free speech. Policing often finds itself in the centre of these policing societal issues. Whether it's managing protests, responding to allegations of hate or offensive social media comments, our job is often impossible and we will be viewed as ineffective. These issues surely can't sit purely with the police service, who are working with outdated legislation. As was said, we don't write the laws, but we're asked of enforcement, even when they are often open to interpretation and division. We've seen calls for clearer guidance on police on these issues from the Met Commissioner. We will wholeheartedly agree. Again, stop setting us up to fail. Define our mission, state our priorities, and let the police the way that communities want to be policed. Now let's look at the impact of today's policing on our people. A recent report by Martis Media showed that the number of officers signed off with mental health issues went up by 22% in the financial year 24-25. This is the fourth year in a row that the number of officers on the sick has gone up. In our member survey last year, 62% of members from the Supers Association reported low force morale. What leads to this? How are our people feeling? I'd like you to hear again from colleagues.
I think that policing damages you on a very personal level. I think what we see, deal with and encounter leaves a mark on you. And that's absolutely true. I'm not the same person I was when I walked through the door in 2002. I would still do it again, but would I want it for my children? I'm not sure that I would.
I was experiencing really high levels of anxiety, really high levels of depression, and that was having a collateral impact in my effectiveness, one, in my day job, but sadly also outside of my work role as a dad and as a husband, and that was really difficult to sort of acknowledge that, I suppose.
It can feel really overwhelming with the amount of staffing issues at the moment, especially as we're seeing issues with welfare really spike in the organisation, and almost feeling helpless to be able to to make them right when you can see what does need to be done. So I really struggle with that.
Time and time again, we see the byproduct of policing getting this wrong. In those cases where cops take their own life, and there needs to be a circuit breaker on this.
We can't stop the job for our people being traumatic. They have willingly undertaken a difficult and dangerous, risky role as a vocation to help other people. But we can build in solid infrastructures to support them. So when it gets too much, which it will undoubtedly will, we have the services to help them. We must have their back. We know how to help them, and we can support them back to full health. We heard Gavin Stevens yesterday speak of the need to be trusted, for a trusted, capable and well workforce. As police budgets are squeezed, welfare is one of the first things to be reduced, when it should be protected at all costs. It is a failure of the service when this critical area is neglected. 85% of the police budget is spent on people. When the situation is bleak, with high stress levels, mounting workloads, constant scrutiny, welfare services are needed more than ever. Keeping staff fit and healthy, physically and mentally, is a moral obligation. The police covenant should be the blueprint for supporting officers. Yet, despite the efforts of some remarkable people, we simply don't see the impact. And it is a pale imitation of the military covenant, which has been in place for 20 years and is enshrined in legislation. So I ask, where is the political imperative to support policing in the same way? I want to stress that there are some brilliant initiatives out there in forces. Merseyside and Humberside are beacons, leading the way in supporting our people and as a result building positive cultures within their organisation. But welfare still remains too much of a postcode lottery for too many officers. This is simply not right. Creating a workplace in which people want to stay and ultimately providing a better service to our communities by people who are fit and well is what we must all strive for. As an association, we want to step in when this isn't the case and find ways to support members who may be struggling. One way in which we have done so this year is by offering every member of the Supers Association a psychological risk assessment, which identifies the state of their psychological well-being. Where issues are identified, a report is provided to occupational health so the unit can be there to provide help to that individual. The results have been so concerning in terms of the manner in which superintendents are carrying out their roles, many ignoring the very worrying signs of psychological burnout, to carry on and get the job done. Research has reported that superintendents describe extreme workloads, long hours and excessive responsibilities with little time to recover, leading to exhaustion and burnout. As a result, clinical scores of anxiety, depression, primary and secondary trauma were significantly above benchmark rates, and the average anxiety and depression scores for super at significantly critical levels. 42% recommended having to have follow-up appointments with their occupational health units, compared to 20% of the benchmark group. Conversely, it also showed that supers take far fewer sick days than those in similar roles and in all other ranks. What does this show us? That those in senior roles with huge levels of responsibility feel the need they have to carry on regardless, that their own health and well-being must take a back seat at the expense of running the organisation. We must address this with culture within senior ranks and pretending burnout is not an issue, that admitting that you're struggling is not seen as a character weakness or believing it will limit career progression. Colleagues that have identified issues and who have gone on to access effective support are reporting major change and huge benefits.
And hand on heart, I can say, had I not accessed that support, one, I wouldn't be in the role that I am now. And I know it sounds dramatic, but it's true. I know I wouldn't be here now if I hadn't have obtained that support. The way I was operating in that state of really high levels of stress, really high levels of anxiety, with real high levels of depression, it wasn't sustainable. It wasn't. And it's been so positive at having access to that support, and I've never looked back.
I want to reflect on this positively. The huge inroads we have made in the world of wellbeing as a service are important. Through the work of Oscar Kelo, plus the hundreds of staff out there in each force, such as those referred to by my colleagues you've just heard in Humberside, each playing their role in protecting our workforce, are starting to do this better. But, and there is always a but, it's not enough. And that's because it's not accessible in the same way to every member of the workforce. This inconsistency was highlighted in last week's State of Policing report, which also drew on our own data reflecting poor morale and motivation of our members within the PSA. It doesn't need to be like this. Chief constables rightly need to be held account for the provision of welfare they have in place for their people, but they also need funding to deliver this. When we reflect on the sickness statistics I've mentioned, when we consider the cold, hard business benefits of having a well and motivated workforce, why on earth hasn't this happened? The State of Policing report directly calls on government and forces to act. Sir Andy Cook says, government must do everything they can to help improve officer and staff morale and consistently support well-being. And forces should do everything they can to create the conditions under which morale can improve. I don't think there is a better case study I can share with you to paint this picture than that of Louise.
So I was the duty senior investigating officer on duty of the day of the murders in Southport, where the 3 young girls were murdered and several other people were seriously injured. And my role was to attend the scene on the day. I was there quite quickly and was sort of very much sort of there for the the initial kind of aftermath. So yeah, it was the challenge around what I'd seen and dealt with. Obviously supporting colleagues that were there, and then it was by early the following week. I just reached a stage where I just didn't feel like I was perhaps operating particularly well. It's knowing and beginning to feel that you're struggling a little bit yourself. Initially wanting to put a brave face on it and be supportive of the staff, and rightly so, because that's part of my role. But then for me, I came to a point in time where I thought, no, it's actually better to be a little bit more open about how I'm feeling, because that might assist other people to come forward who might not do so. We have a wellbeing van, and it was stationed at my workplace on that particular day. And I decided to go and visit, and that led me on a bit of a journey with OHU that I'm really grateful for. I felt that there were other people that needed it a lot more than me, and so I almost felt guilty about going, and my mind was put at rest very, very quickly about that. I couldn't have been welcomed any more warmly. Within minutes, I was with a psychologist there and then. An arrangement was made for a follow-up about 3 days later. Again, that was probably a couple of hours. That went really well. And then about a week or so later, I was allocated a counsellor. I know that it's there for me to pick up again, as and when, and I will continue to do that. It's kept me in work. I didn't want to take time off. If I'd not have had the support that I've had, I think that would have inevitably happened. The wellbeing offer in this organisation is so good that it's got rid of some of those barriers. It's broken down barriers, in my belief, and just enables people to speak more openly. It's brave to say that that things aren't right. It's a sign of strength. So please take the support that's on offer for you. It's there for a reason. But no, it's got me through. It really has got me through.
We can only imagine the horror of what Louise and her colleagues saw and dealt with that day. Now imagine a reality where no one stepped in to help. Thank goodness for the incredible welfare offering at Merseyside and for the staff dedicated to getting Louise through this. Let's make that the norm. That means properly resourced occupational health units. It means effective supervision, meaningful PDRs and check-ins that don't feel like a tick-box exercise. It means safe workloads, protected times of rest, and development, and a culture that makes it safe to speak up. It's about investment in staff. It makes complete sense. I want to end on a positive. I want to remind us all why it's so important that we show these people the worth and value they deserve. I want to take a moment to acknowledge those forces and leaders who are driving wellbeing forward, who are treating it as a leadership responsibility and not a luxury. You heard colleagues talk about the 60 hours week they work each week. You heard them talk about how policing damages you. But they also said this.
And I know that sounds cheesy, but that's like making a difference. Ensuring that people can sleep safer at night, that sort of stuff is why was why I joined, and is why I remain so motivated today. Is the difference we can make it can be seismic in policing. Strongly feel is the greatest job in the world. It's just not without its challenge at times.
I'll be honest, I still love it today. I've loved it for 22 and a half years.
I love being a police officer. I still love being a police officer now, even though there are challenges in it. I think being a police officer in the UK is something to be proud of because of the traditions and the values that we uphold and the respect that we still have with a lot of people in the community.
At each rank, there's been something that will have, when I look back, when I reach retirement age or whatever that is, that will really stick out in terms of when you ask the question, did you make a difference? Yes, I did. And I'll still be really glad I became a police officer.
So let's make it better for those that come after us and protect this feeling of pride. We will continue to champion evidence-based change, raising these issues in Westminster, in meeting rooms all over the country with colleagues and in the national media. We need leaders who listen, who act, who make brave decisions and who work to protect people behind the badge, along with their families and loved ones who share in their sacrifices. So what's the message to government? It's to fund us, support us, listen to us, and look after us. It's what policing needs, and it's what policing deserves. Thank you.